All right, well, good morning. Welcome to church, everyone. My name is Ricky, if I haven't had a chance to meet you. Happy Palm Sunday to you guys. Glad that you're here worshiping with us, celebrating with us today. Palm Sunday, it commemorates the day that Jesus entered Jerusalem near the start of the Passover week. And it's packed with rich symbolism and significance. Everything from suffering to victory, celebration to mourning, praise, even salvation. And for us, those of us who identify as followers of Jesus, this day, Palm Sunday, marks the beginning of what Christians all over the world refer to and call Holy Week. It starts with Palm Sunday. It includes Maundy Thursday. It includes Good Friday. And then, of course, it culminates a week from now on Easter Sunday. And historically speaking, as I said, this is the day that Jesus kind of entered into Jerusalem. If you grew up in church or if you've been a part of church for a while, then you might be familiar with the story or the narrative of the triumphant entry. And this is Jesus entering the city of Jerusalem at the start of the Passover week to much acclaim and celebration. In fact, we're told that large crowds gathered and lined up the roads, lined up the streets to welcome Jesus into the city of Jerusalem. And what's interesting is that most of the people, or probably the majority of the people who were involved on that welcome procession some 2,000 years ago, probably had little historical awareness or understanding of the significance of that day. Sometimes you can be in a moment and not realize the grandiose nature of a moment. And to be fair, and kind of in their defense, it's not like it was really their fault. As I said, it was near the start of the Passover week, and so they were really consumed and focused on their present reality, not necessarily a future possibility. See, the Passover celebration festival is one of two biggest celebrations on the Jewish calendar. It was a day, or not a day, it was a series of days, a festival that commemorated and remembered the Hebrew people's deliverance from Egyptian slavery some 1,400 years prior. And it was an annual festival, an annual celebration that they would partake in. There was a whole host of things that they would be a part of and do. And so naturally, there's a lot of buzz and a lot of excitement. But for a select few, or maybe a minority of the people who were there welcoming Jesus on that particular day, they weren't just remembering or celebrating their once upon a time deliverance. They were out there to greet and welcome in their newly identified deliverer. And so they had gathered to say, this man, Jesus, is the one that's going to lead us forward. And so they were kind of encouraging and bringing others in and cheering and shouting Hosanna. And they were doing what they could to welcome Jesus and to honor him as he made his way into the city of Jerusalem. Now, you might wonder, if you're unfamiliar with the story, maybe if you are familiar with the story, what would it take? Let me just kind of put it this way. What would it take for you? Let's kind of have some fun with this. Imagine you're going to a major city of your region, in this case, New York City. And word spreads that you're arriving. What would it take to have crowds of people show up to welcome you and cheer you on? What would you have to do? Now, let's think about that, right? That would require a lot of effort, or certainly at least a significant level of fame or recognition. And you could say that at this point in Jesus' ministry, his fame had reached its peak. At this point in time in Jesus' earthly ministry, word had spread all throughout the region of the miracles and the things that he had done. His crowd and his following was the largest it had been up to this point. And his reputation literally, in this case, and in many other cases we read throughout the scriptures, his reputation literally preceded him. Whereupon word of Jesus' arrival or Jesus' coming, crowds would gather, people would meet, they would congregate in order to see him, to meet him, to connect with him, to hear from him, to receive something from him. And so it's not questionable or even uncertain in this moment of Palm Sunday, that first Palm Sunday, Jesus had really reached the pinnacle of his popularity when it came to his earthly ministry. And that's exactly what we see in the Gospel of John. We're going to be in John chapter 12, and I'm going to show you some things. We're going to read some things out of the New Living Translation. You'll see this. It'll be up on the screen for you. But we're going to start in John chapter 12, verse 12. We're going to read through a few verses, and then we're going to kind of acknowledge what we see as we read these verses. Now, I just asked you that question. What would it take for you to come to New York City, land at LaGuardia, or land at JFK, or God forbid, Penn Station, and then you have a crowd of people cheering you on? So imagine with me for a moment, kind of position yourself, place yourself in this story. Consider what's taking place. Don't just read the words to read the words, but read the words to envision. Read the words to identify. And here's what John writes. John chapter 12, verse 12. The next day, the news that Jesus was on the way to Jerusalem swept through the city. A large crowd of Passover visitors took palm branches and went down the road to meet him. And they shouted, "Praise God," or "Hosanna, blessings to the one who comes in the name of the Lord. Hail to the King of Israel." Jesus found a young donkey and he rode on it, fulfilling the prophecy that said, "Don't be afraid, people of Jerusalem. Look, your king is coming riding on a donkey's colt." Verse 16, his disciples didn't understand at the time that this was a fulfillment of prophecy. But after Jesus entered into his glory, they remembered what had happened and realized that these things had been written about him. Verse 17, many in the crowd had seen Jesus call Lazarus from the tomb, raising him from the dead, and they were telling others about it. And that was the reason why so many went out to meet him, because they had heard about this miraculous sign. Then the Pharisees, the religious leaders, said to each other, "Look, there's nothing we can do. Look, everyone has gone after him." Verse 20, some Greeks who had come to Jerusalem for the Passover celebration paid a visit to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and they said to him, "Sir, we want to meet Jesus." Now again, think about this story. Think about what's taking place here. Verse 12 says that large crowds had gathered to meet Jesus. And mind you, this is in a day and age where there is no such thing as legacy media, much less social media. Or I suppose you could make the argument that social media was actually social. It was like word of mouth, people telling people about what was going on. And these crowds, word had spread throughout the entire city that Jesus was coming. And then verse 13 says that word didn't just spread, but that these people, in an organic way, organized themselves to come welcome him in. From outside of the city all the way into the city, shouting Hosanna in the highest, declaring him as king, and remembering, or some being wholly unaware of the prophecy, but Jesus stepping in or riding in on the back of a donkey, fulfilling a prophetic word spoken to the prophet Zechariah. And so you have this symbolism happening here. You have people shouting. You have people praising. You have people gathering. And rumors and testimonies about the miracles, about the things that Jesus had done, started to spread, or maybe had previously already begun to spread. And so people are talking about it. Well, I heard he raised a guy from the dead. And someone else like, yeah, I was there. And you know, whenever something like that happens, there's a lot more people who say they were there than were actually there, right? And so, yeah, I was there too, and my cousin was there. And in fact, you know, my brother, he was the one that told me about it. And then just word starts to spread about what he's done, and people are associating and coming to believe in this. So much so that the people who were actually opposed to Jesus, the Pharisees, they just kind of threw their hands up and just like, there's nothing we can do. The people are so infatuated with him, so caught up in this kind of persona or this being, and they're chasing after him. We can't even stop them. In a sense, Jesus had probably hijacked their vision or their desire for what the Passover was supposed to be. And as I said, there was great symbolism here. There was great significance here. But as John tells us, hey, in the moment, we had no idea what was going on. Only until after Jesus went into glory did we recognize, wait a minute, this was something special. But this wasn't just limited to a geographic region of Jerusalem or even Israel. We're told that there were some Greeks who had traveled to the city of Jerusalem for Passover, and they wanted to meet Jesus. So word had spread far out about this man named Jesus. Now, you may not think about this because to you, you're like, oh man, it'd be great to go from Greece to Tel Aviv. I'll just book a flight and I'll be there in a matter of a few hours. But in this day and age, there were no airplanes. This was a 7-day journey one way. So people who had gone out of their way to be there, to experience this, to be a part of this. I mean, clearly this was a big deal to these people. Or maybe better put, Jesus was a big deal to these people. Jesus was a big deal to these people. And it's fitting that we're wrapping up this series titled It's Not About Me today on Palm Sunday, because these people came out to honor Jesus. These people came out to welcome Jesus. They came out to celebrate Jesus. And this series, It's Not About Me, has been a series where we spent the past 7 weeks focusing on, teaching on, preaching on, and challenging one another to live into many of the one another's that we see throughout the New Testament. And today we wrap up this series with our final installment and our final instruction, which is this: to honor one another. To honor one another, just as Jesus was honored on this day some 2,000 years ago. We, those of us who are called Christians, those of us who identify with the way of Jesus and seek to follow after Jesus, are instructed to honor one another. In fact, this is how the Apostle Paul would write this to his letter at the church at Rome. Romans 12:10, he gives this bit of instruction. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Honor one another. Now, if I'm honest with you, this is one area that I feel like I don't know, I can't say with confidence that we do a great job of this as a church. I'm not speaking about like the church at large, I'm speaking about meta-church. I'm not speaking about other Christians somewhere else, I'm speaking about the Christians that are here. Now, let me be clear, I don't think we're dishonoring to one another. But when you think about the other one another's, for those of you who have kind of journeyed through this series with us, serve one another, forgive one another, encourage or share one another's burdens, even grieving with one another or being hospitable or showing hospitality to one another. Those are all things that I think we do a pretty good job at. And certainly there's room for us to grow. Certainly there's opportunity for us to get better or to become healthier in those areas. But when it comes to honoring one another, this is an area that I think we lack in. This is an area that I think we're either unfamiliar with or uncommitted to for a multitude or a variety of reasons. And I'll share some of these reasons with you, okay? I think my observation, now I've been pastoring the church the whole time it's been around, so this is just my observation, okay? I'll share with you 3 reasons why I think we're not so great at honoring one another: ignorance, obstinance, and cynicism. Ignorance, or I guess I got them in different order. Ignorance, cynicism, and obstinance. Ignorance. Ignorance is like, not that you're dumb. Ignorance is that we don't know or that we're unaware. Ignorance is that we think, or maybe we mistakenly confuse honor and respect. Well, why would I show honor to you if you haven't done anything? Why would I honor? What have you done to deserve honor from me? You see, the difference between honor and respect is earned, honor is given. Respect is earned, honor is given. See, honor is what's called a virtue. Now, let me I'm going to be really tight here because I don't want to divest or divulge too much into our education system. But virtues are things that we are morally obligated to do. And honor is a virtue. Meaning that I don't do this because you deserve it. I do this because I owe it to you. You don't owe me. I owe you. And so honor is it's a virtue. It says this is something that my moral obligation is to show you honor. Respect is, hey, you did this, you've accomplished this, you've succeeded in this, you've done a tremendous job in this area. So I respect that and I can respect you. But honor is, no, this is a God-given thing. This is a God-embedded thing. And so I show honor because that's what God instructs me to do. That's who God has been to me. And it's the moral obligation I owe to my brother or my sister. But then there's cynicism. Cynicism, right? Where cynicism is kind of like, I'm a bit distrustful of humans. I'm a bit skeptical. Well, I don't want to show you honor because I don't want it to get to your head. Last time I showed someone honor, they got really inflated. Their ego got really inflated, and so they thought they were better than everyone else. They thought they were just kind of cruising. They could boss everyone else around and do whatever. I've seen this happen too much, Ricky, especially in the church, and so I don't want to show honor because I'm a bit skeptical that you know how to steward it. And so we're cynical, distrustful, but then there's just obstinance. And obstinance, it's not pretty. Obstinance, by definition, is stubborn refusal. And there are just some people who are like, nope, not going to do it. I don't care what I'm told to do. I don't care what I owe you. I don't care what God has done for me. I'm not going to honor you. What have you done for me? Why should I do that for you? No one else honors me. Da-da-da-da. I'm just not going to do it. Now, I don't know which of these three, if any of these three, apply to you, but I would encourage you to just maybe take some honest self-reflection and to look and say, yeah, you know what? I have treated or misunderstood honor and treated it as if it was respect, like you've got to earn it from me. Or, yeah, I am, I've been hurt in the past, or I've seen some things not go so well, so I'm a bit cynical. And so I don't honor people because I'm a bit cynical about how they're going to, respond to it or steward it. Or, yeah, you know what? I am just stubbornly refusing to do this thing that I'm supposed to do. But I would suspect that all of us, if we're honest, all of us have various levels or varying levels of these three qualities represented and within each of us. But here's what's really interesting. I'll bring it back to the story. You see none of these attitudes in the Palm Sunday story. You don't. The people weren't saying to Jesus, well, hey, what have you done for me? I didn't get raised from the dead, so why should I honor you? Hey, you haven't blessed me. You didn't feed me in a miracle. Why should I honor you? No, they weren't like saying, well, you haven't earned this. They just showed up to honor him. They just pulled up to the spot and said, hey, Jesus is coming. Hosanna in the highest. He's our king. They weren't cynical. They weren't saying, well, like Caesar, we got to honor him. And so look what happened with him. Or look at all these. Mind you, at this time in history, there was a whole lot of kind of political and leadership change and kind of reorientation in this region because of distrust. So they had every reason to be distrustful of a potential leader. And yet, we don't see that in those people. And then when it comes to obstinance, in fact, the only people, I guess you could say you do see obstinance in the story, but the people it comes from are the people, the Pharisees, that we say we don't actually want to be like. So the people who stubbornly refuse to show honor to Jesus are the very people that many of us would say, oh, they make me angry. Oh, I get frustrated with people like that, the religious types, the stubborn, proud types. And then we don't want anything to do with those people, and yet so often we respond in the same way. Not just that, not only do you not see this in the Palm Sunday story, these attitudes, but maybe more importantly, you don't see any of these attitudes in the life and the way of Jesus. Not once does he treat people with dishonor. Not once does he withhold honor from someone. In fact, none of these attitudes, none of these qualities are in the life of Jesus. To the contrary, Jesus was quick to bestow honor upon all people. Read the Gospels. Read Matthew. Read Mark. Read Luke. Read John. Read the stories of Jesus' life and look at how he interacts with strangers, foreigners, poor people, wealthy people, smart people, uneducated people. In every interaction, in every circumstance, there is honor that he is graciously and generously bestowing upon them, even if the people around him are not. This is who Jesus is. This is what Jesus does, and this is crucial because if those of us who say we follow the way of Jesus, or equally important, those of us who say we want to follow the way of Jesus, are seeking to become like him and to live out his instruction, then it's crucial for us that we grow in this area and that we too show honor to others, that we too bestow honor upon all people, and to live this out in a way that is reflective and accurately reflective of the heart and the way of Jesus. And here's what I want. Here's what I desire as the pastor. I desire for us to be a community, to be a place, to be a people where everyone who walks through our doors receives an enormous amount of honor. I desire for us to be a culture where we're not withholding honor and it's being, let me just see what they do with this before I do something over here. No, you walk in, you're going to be honored. I want people to walk out of these doors feeling, man, I was more honored there than I've ever been honored in any other church or any other place. Those people, they didn't even know me and they were so honoring to me. Why? Because that's who Jesus is and that's what Jesus has done to us. It's that simple. It's not born out of like this insecurity of like, well, do people like me as the pastor? It's not born out of, I don't, no one claps for my message. It's not born out of like, I don't get anyone saying amen. It's born out of, I want to be like Jesus and I want the people that are a part of this church to be like Jesus and I want us to honor people because Jesus has honored us. Let me be specific. Jesus has honored you. That's all people at all times. And so what I want to do and what I want to spend the remaining portion of our time doing is teaching you about what it looks like or what honor could be like in your life and how that translates into our community and our culture. And I want to go back to Romans 12:10 because there's a little bit of context that I think has to be provided to supplement what we see here. Romans 12:10, right? The latter part says this: honor one another above yourselves. Now, at face value, it seems pretty straightforward, but just so that we're clear, just so that we're all on the same page, I want to make sure we're working from the same point, the same place, and with the same definitions, okay? So I'll kind of break this down. The word honor in the Greek is the word time. And it means to honor or to value or to prize. To honor is to value or to prize. Now, you have something at home. You might have something on your wrist that you value. Ladies might have something on your finger that you value, or you might envision one day having something on your finger that you value. The things that we value, the things that we prize, we protect them, we guard them, we take care of them. We show them off. We let other people know about it. We celebrate when we receive that thing. So to honor is to value and to prize. And again, I think that's fairly straightforward. I think that we get what it means to value or to prize something. But the interesting part of Romans 12:10 is not really the word honor. It's that phrase that's translated above yourselves. You see, that word in the Greek is a word that's kind of funny looking and maybe a little bit difficult to pronounce, so bear with me, but it's progeomai. Progeomai, and it's actually a leadership term, and it means to lead the way or to go before or to consider others. It's a word that is often used in leadership context, but it has broad application. Which is why when you read Romans 12:10, if you happen to read it in a variety of translations, you'll see that part of the verse translated slightly different than other ways or in other translations. In fact, I'll give you 5 of them, okay? 5 common Bible translations. You'll see them up on the screen. There's the NIV, which I just read out of. Honor one another. There's that phrase, progeomai, above yourselves. But the Christian Standard Bible, the CSB, says, take the lead in honoring one another. The New Living Translation, which is the translation that I read the John passage from, says, take delight in honoring each other. And then the English Standard Version says, outdo one another in showing honor. And in the King James, can I get an amen for those of you who grew up on the King James? In honor, preferring one another. So even in these various translations, we see kind of a breadth of what it means or what it looks like to honor one another. And I love this because I think actually each of these translations gives us insight into what it looks like, what it means to become an honoring people, to offer honor to others, to extend honor, to be honoring. And so what I want to do is I actually just want to kind of take us through these different kind of maybe translations and give some specific applications that you can live with, that you can walk with, that you can take from here and show honor to people, whether you know them or not, whether you go to this church or not. And so we're going to start with that first one. You'll see it kind of highlighted. Honor one another above yourselves. above yourselves. If you remember back in the Palm Sunday story, we see that we saw that Jesus was honored by the crowds, right? And it kind of created quite the ruckus throughout Jerusalem. Like people were like kind of scattering around the city. Jerusalem was already popping. It was already busy because of the Passover, but it kind of ratcheted up and leveled up when word spread that Jesus was coming. And these people kind of gathered to welcome Jesus in. They were shouting, Hosanna to the Son of David. They were declaring him king. And it's interesting because they had a Caesar. They didn't, sort of like a king-ish, but not exactly like a king. Yet in this moment, if Jesus would have declared himself king, they would have said, yes, you're our king. They had a high priest, but based on the way the other religious leaders and the other priests were kind of speaking amongst themselves about this man named Jesus, it seems to be that if Jesus would have declared himself their high priest, the people would have been like, yeah, out with this guy, in with this guy. They had rabbis, they had teachers, they had leaders. And yet, in this moment and at this time, they were so, infatuated with this man named Jesus. And they were doing everything they could to honor him above the Caesar, above the high priest, above their other leaders. But what's interesting about this is that while the people were committed to honoring Jesus, Jesus did something unique. He didn't clamor for greater honor. He didn't try to ask or seek greater glory. He didn't kind of just soak it in and say, yeah, keep it coming. Give me some more. I like that. I like what you're saying there. That sounds right. He didn't update his IG profile. He didn't get a jacket with Hosanna stitched on the back. Instead of clamoring for greater honor, Jesus, and maybe the ultimate Jesus juke of all time, 5 days later chose to honor them above himself by dying for their sins. Rather than saying, I'm the king now, I'm the captain now, that scene from that movie, rather than coming in and taking over, Jesus said, no, I'm going to flip this. I'm going to reposition things, and I'm going to honor you. I'm worthy of this praise, by the way. I'm worthy of this recognition. I'm worthy of this honor. But rather than taking that honor, I'm going to honor you instead. I'm going to lay myself down and raise you up and elevate you and give my life for your sake. Jesus, in this moment, opted to place others above himself. And in the same way, we show honor when we choose to place others above ourselves. Let me add some context, maybe some flavor to that statement. We, in the same way, live like, look like, and reflect the heart of Jesus when we choose to honor others above ourselves, regardless of our title, regardless of our wages, regardless of our successes, regardless of our accomplishments. Let me add some more. When we honor others, regardless of their sins, regardless of their wrongdoings, regardless of their political affiliation, regardless of their actions, whether they have our approval or not. In the same way that Jesus chose to honor all those people because salvation is freely given to all. That crucifixion, that death was purchasing the price of your sins and your neighbor's sins and my sins and the people who are showing up next week and the people who will show up the week after. Jesus offered it all and honored all of us and placed all of us above himself. And in the same way, we are instructed to do that for others. To honor them above ourselves. In fact, you could say that you are honoring someone else when you are seeking to lower yourself. You are honoring someone else when you seek to lower yourself. Now, the Christian Standard Bible takes kind of more that leadership angle with this, and it says, take the lead in honoring one another. Take the lead in honoring one another. Again, you got to think back to this Palm Sunday story. Crowds gathered organically to shout Hosanna, to lay palm branches on this road as Jesus is making his way into the city. They didn't have an Evite or an Eventbrite. They didn't have formal invitations, save the dates. They didn't have like a meetup group. Someone somewhere, maybe a series of someones, a group of someone said, hey, he's coming, let's go out there. Hey, he's arriving to town, let's welcome him. Hey, I may not be an official, city planner. I may not have, I don't know how we organize parades over here in Jerusalem, but I know that I'm just going to go out there and meet him and welcome this Messiah and welcome this King into the city. And I'm going to give him honor regardless of whether or not I have the accreditation or the credentials or the talent or whatever. I'm just going to show honor because that's what he is worthy of. And the thing about honor is that you don't need to wait for other people. You don't need someone else's permission to show honor to someone. You don't need to wait until is this what we're doing? Is this what we're doing? Okay, now I'm going to go do it with you. You just take the lead. The instruction is to go, to proceed with this. It's a leadership term. So you don't need authorization. You don't need approval. You just need desire. And that desire coupled with action allows you and empowers you and enables you to take the lead in showing honor to one another. I'll give you an example. This is kind of a situation that happens. It's happened here at Meta Church, but it happens in other areas as well and with other spaces. You ever find yourself in a situation like this, right? Like where someone comes up to speak and maybe they're like a guest speaker or maybe they're someone of renown. And so part of the room like claps. And you're like, okay, are we clapping now? And then like you go to clap and you're like, wait, but the person next to me, or not everyone's clapping. Some people are clapping, but not everyone's clapping. Or like someone finishes a speech or they finish a talk and like some people like stand up and they're like, yeah, that was great. And they're like clapping and you're like, well, I'm like 3/4 of the way back. I don't need to stand up, do I? And it's like we're so reluctant and hesitant to just show honor. When the reality is you don't need to wait for someone in the front row to stand up. You don't need to wait till 4 people or 6 people or enough people clap. Like if you're going to show honor to someone, you just do it. And what you'll find is that if you just do it, and if the person next to you just does it, and the person next to them just does it, then everyone will be doing it. Like this is how you do honor. You take the lead in doing this. And you show it, just as the people did with Jesus. Romans 12:10 in the New Living Translation is probably my favorite rendering of this. It says, take delight. Take delight. I like this translation because it indicates that showing honor to one another is enjoyable. That it's actually something that can be enjoyed. It's something we should enjoy. To delight in something means you take great pleasure in it. In other words, you can't show honor to someone else and be a curmudgeon at the same time. It's not honor if you're grumpy. It's not honor if you're reluctant. It's not honor if you're doing it, well, I just got to do this because the pastor said I'm supposed to show honor, so I'm going to honor to you. What are you, a troll? It's not honor. It's not honor to be spiteful or bitter. Let me be clear, it's not honoring to be suspicious or skeptical. It's not honoring to be jaded. In fact, it's dishonoring to that person if you're any of those things. And get this, not only is it dishonoring to them, but you're also robbing yourself of the enjoyment that God intended in you to experience when you honor someone else. So you're withholding what you owe them, what they deserve, but you are also stifling and prohibiting yourself from experiencing what you could have for yourself. And again, I'm just going to come back to the heart of who God is. Because Zephaniah 3:17 says that the Lord delights in you. You can look it up. It doesn't say he delights in the perfect version of you. It doesn't say he delights in you when you get everything right. It doesn't say he delights in you when you know all the scripture verses. It doesn't say he delights in you only if you're happy with him. It simply says he delights in you because it's you, and you are worthy of honor. And because you are worthy of honor, your neighbor, that stranger, the person sitting in front of you, behind you, the person you're looking at, and the person you're trying to avoid looking at is worthy of honor. Because God has bestowed this upon you. See, honor is not some sort of cumbersome type of thing or cutesy little Christian hack. Honor is scriptural, but honor is also Christ-like. And if your ambition and if your heart is to become like Christ, to grow in the ways of Christ, then it's on you to delight in showing honor to one another. Romans 12:10 in the English Standard Version is translated this way: outdo one another in showing honor. Outdo one another in showing honor. Now, all four gospel accounts, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, share the story of Jesus' entry into Jerusalem. All of them talk about his arrival, people gathering to meet him, crowds gathering to shout Hosanna, him riding on the back of a donkey. They share these details with us, multiple eyewitnesses to this event. But only John's gospel makes this note about some Greeks coming to Jerusalem to celebrate Passover and try to find Jesus. And it's really only 3 verses, like verse 20, 21, and 22, that we're told about this story, or that we're told about these people. We don't know how many they were. We don't know if they were men and women. We know that it's Greeks plural, so there's more than one. And we don't know how they knew how to find Philip or what kind of pointed them in that direction. But it's almost like John, the author of this gospel, had to go out of his way, or wanted to go out of his way, to show us that there was a group of people who went out of their way to honor Jesus. Now, let me explain what I mean for you. I already told you this, but to travel from Greece to Jerusalem would have been a 7-day journey one way. So we know, without question, that it took them at least 14 days of their lives. 7 days there and 7 days back. We can safely assume, because we're told they were there for the Passover, that they were going to spend the majority, if not the entirety of the Passover festival in Jerusalem. Another 7-9 days. So at least 3 weeks of their lives were committed to this moment. Along the way, I don't know about you, but I don't travel for free. Most people I know don't travel for free. So they incurred some cost to travel, to get there, to stay there, food, lodging, transportation. But it seems like they were willing and okay to do that. But here's the kicker. They get to Philip and they say, we want to meet Jesus. Philip goes to talk to another disciple. Hey, I want to introduce him to Jesus. And then Jesus hears about this, and then Jesus starts teaching. And actually, we're never told that they even met Jesus. There was no guarantee. There was no certainty that they were going to encounter or experience this one to whom they had traveled so far to meet. And yet they still did it. And I think that is what it means to outdo one another in honor. What it looks like to say, you know what? I might incur a cost by honoring this person. It might inconvenience me if I honor this situation. It might take some time to honor this person. But I'm going to do it anyway, because outdoing one another in honor is not about a competitive spirit. It is about a tender heart that says, you are worth it, and I'm willing to show you this honor, even if it's not something wholly easy or accommodating to me. It's to outdo one another. It's to say, hey, I'll go above and beyond. I'm not going to settle. See, when it comes to honor, good enough is never good enough. And we've got to scrap that mentality, that mindset. That, I'll just do the bare minimum and that's sufficient. Because honor goes above and beyond. I'm going to offer my best, even if it takes some time, even if it costs me something, even if there's no guarantees of how it's going to be received or responded to on the other side. Then the last one, King James. Real quick, show of hands. Who grew up on the King James? Anybody? Oh, wow, we got a house in here. All right. Thus saith the Lord. Here we go. In honoring, preferring one another. You know, a preference is to have a greater liking for one thing over another thing. To prefer something, right? We all have preferences. Prefer Coke over Pepsi. You prefer McDonald's over Burger King. If you prefer Burger King over McDonald's, come on. We'll do a special invitation. We have preferences. We prefer one thing over another. And here we're told to prefer one another, to prefer them over ourselves, to prefer who they are over myself. And in this case, to show honor to one another, what it's saying is that honor is not a matter of your personal preference. Not like, I don't prefer to do this, so I'm not going to do it. The instruction is, hey, if you honor someone, or if you're going to honor someone, you're going to do it in preference to them, not in preference to yourself. See, we honor Christ because he honored us, but we honor others because he's commanded us to do so, not because we prefer it. You may not feel like it, and you may not want to. I get it. I've been there. There's times where I don't feel like honoring someone else. There's times I don't want to honor anyone else. But honor is about making a commitment. It's about saying, no, I'm going to be committed to preferring others over myself, even if I don't want to, even if I don't feel like it. And then, you know, this final translation, it's so fitting because, again, the whole of this series has literally been titled, It's Not About Me. And it was titled this way on purpose because these one another's are not about our preferences. These one another's are not about what Ricky prefers to do. It's not about what Krista prefers to do. And it's not about what you prefer to do. On my own, in my flesh, apart from Jesus, apart from the work of his Holy Spirit within me, I don't prefer to serve other people. I prefer to serve myself. On my own, in my flesh, I don't prefer to forgive somebody else. I actually prefer to be bitter and spiteful and hold that against them forever. I don't prefer to share someone else's burdens because I got enough of my own. I don't prefer to be hospitable to one another because it costs me time and work and energy that I've got to expend. I don't prefer to grieve with one another because it makes me uncomfortable. What do I say? I've been here for a few hours. Is that enough? Is that too little? Like, is there an appropriate, how do I tactfully say, I don't know what to say. It makes me uncomfortable, so I prefer not to do those things. But the one another's in the New Testament are not about my preferences. The one another's are about being obedient to Jesus' instruction and becoming like him. I'll say it again, and I'll encourage you, write it down, take a photo of it, cement this in your mind, in your heart, and in your spirit. The one another's are not about your preferences. The one another's are about being obedient to Jesus' instruction and becoming like him. I cannot become like Jesus if I don't do the things Jesus did. And at the heart of the one another's is not me. It's Jesus. It's about what he did. It's about what he offered. It's about what he's instructed. And if I can pursue those things and commit to those things, then what I realize is that in the process, I'm changed. In the process, I'm different. In the process, I'm transformed. And all the while I realize this has nothing to do with me and everything to do with him. So church, as we close out today, I want to challenge you and I want to encourage you to lay down your own preferences. Lay down your preferences and pursue the way of Jesus. It's this way that's changed the world that we live in. It's this way that continues to change the world that we live in. And it's this way that will change the world that we hope to live in tomorrow and in the days to come. It's this man that revolutionized everything we know. I don't know if you're a believer. I don't know if you're a skeptic. I don't know where you kind of land on the whole Jesus thing. But here's what I know. You're here. There's a reason. There's a curiosity. There's something compelling about this man that makes you think, what if? What if there's more to the story? What if what is spoken about him is true? What if what he offers can change who I become? And that's why we do these things. That's why we chase after these things. So I'm going to ask the team to come forward. I'm going to ask everyone to stand to your feet.